Welcome to Office Hours. I am Steve Drost. With me, as always, Will Kaplan. Of course, Will and I are both from the Quivr team. And what is Quivr? Simple. We are the CRM built by financial advisors for financial advisors, where we are trying to help you run your business at peak efficiency. And each episode, we tackle a couple of cool items that came directly from Quivr users who are trying to do just that, make their lives just a little bit easier. Will, meetings, right? I just came out of Surge not too long ago. I love it. It energizes me. Believe it or not, that is my favorite time. Now, my wife might not agree because I'm a little less active during those times of our lives. But regardless, I love it. You're meeting with clients. You're doing all these things. And one thing that's been a common theme with new users, specifically larger firms, actually, and it's the compliance team and the back office team, maybe the director of the advisory staff, business development, what have you. Those people, firm owners, advisors, right? There's been a common theme that we've seen lately, and it's maybe taking meeting topic, meeting tracking, content within a meeting to that next level. And I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think that when you're the only person in the firm, when you're at a smaller firm or when you have a really small team, it's really easy to sort of get everybody pulling in the same direction. And then as you grow, it becomes harder. And to your point about firm owners or compliance personnel or, the director of compliance or the director of operations, you really want to make sure that every client at the firm is having roughly the same experience, right? It shouldn't matter what team is servicing you. It shouldn't matter Will's my advisor, Steve's my advisor, Steve's, a better advisor than Will is. And so those clients are happier. Ideally, we want to make sure that, Will is checking the same boxes and giving at least a, sort of lowest common denominator, low bar of service. And tracking all of that can be really difficult. And from a compliance standpoint, making sure that we talk about certain things every year, that can be really difficult because everybody has kind of their own way of doing things to a certain extent. And we're trying to standardize that. And so we've had to your point, we have had a couple of conversations recently where people have said I really want to make sure that this specific thing happens at least once a year. We meet with our clients 2 times, 3 times, 4 times a year. At some point, we have to check this particular box. Or we meet with clients 4 times a year, but we don't always have the same agendas. It can be kind of random. And so we need to make sure that we're getting do we talk about retirement? Do we talk about education? Do we talk about tax? How do we track all that? How do we make sure all that's getting done? And so it came to it was a couple of different conversations actually, but I think they're coalescing around the same underlying topic, which is we've got this meeting record. How do we know what's in it? How do we sort of get this information then back out of it? And it's funny, some of these firms that I think really understand how the household works or how the contact works, forget that the meeting is kind of the same thing and they can do some of this, some of the same stuff to it. And so the idea that you can add a custom field to a meeting, it just sort of slips off the back of your head and you forget it is just as customizable as everything else.
And I recommend you do customize it. And also the common theme here, and again, I'll probably take this to my grave and anything in life. Tell me what you want your outcome to be, and then let's back into the work that needs to be there, right? You're trying to bench 300. Perfect. We create the plan, right? You want to bench press, you're trying to get stronger. We create the plan to get you there by lifting X times per week and accelerating your whatever, right? And that's the exact same thing here. Start with your desired outcome and then figure out the steps that need to happen to get there. And I was just thinking off the top of my head before we were meeting today to record this at my old firm, 30-ish employees. So definitely multi-advisor, right? There were 10 or so advisors, tons of different teams. I think I've said it on here many times. I worked with, 9 or 10 different people in client relationships and, whatever the factorial is for that for different teams. But if you go talk to the compliance officer for that, they cared about very specific things. Was there a meeting that constituted what we called the qualifying annual review? And that was, we just onboarded a firm that called it the client annual review, but that's the big one. That's the one a year minimum, baseline, like you mentioned, to satisfy our regulators. We had the big meeting. Okay, well, imagine if that's something that matters for you, imagine on the meeting module, you have a required pick list that says yes or no. And that field says qualifies for qualified annual review, or, we call it QAR, qualified annual review. QAR question mark, the default is no. Or maybe the default is blank and you have to pick yes or no. And then as soon as you do yes, what that can then do is give you a dashboard. Now what you can see is, tell me a client that hasn't had a meeting in the last 12 months or in this calendar year that had that as a yes. Now you can automatically track every single client in your firm that hasn't had a meeting with a qualified annual review in the last 12 months.
And I think that's what's so powerful about this is it really does give you that ability to say, like, these are the things that we want to pay attention to. These are the things that we consider to be important. Are they being done? And, we have by default meeting notes and a one sentence summary to sort of encapsulate what happened during that meeting. And you can get some of that data out of that, but it's not the same as having a pick list or a couple checkboxes or a yes no pick list like what you're talking about. And you can even take it a step further where if your qualifying annual review is, let's simplify it down. We have to talk about your investment policy statement. We have to talk about your trusted contacts. We have to talk about your beneficiaries. Maybe there's two or three more of these things. I mean, I'm just kind of going off the top of my head right now, but if those are the things that need to be done, then we can add an entire section to the meeting that says qualifying annual review and it has checkboxes for all of these things. And like, yeah, just go down the list. You're looking at the meeting notes, reviewing the meeting. Great. We talked about 2 out of 5 of these things. I'm going to check those 2 boxes, roll forward to the next meeting. I know I have to talk about the other 3. And it's this engineering the data based on the outcome that we want to be able to provide. And ultimately, in this example, we want to have consistency across client teams, consistency for the client experience, compliance aspect of this, operational compliance component of this too. We want to sort of standardize all this. We need data. We need to track it. This is the right way to track it. Related to this, we also had someone that basically said, I want to cover, of the planning topics, I've defined these are the ones that we want to cover for all of our clients. Awesome. That can be checkboxes. That could be a multi-select pick list where you just go through and you say, we did retirement, we did education. What do we do in the next one? And then you can, to your point, create these fantastic reports and dashboards that then look through that data and say, show me clients that don't meet these criteria. Show me clients that do meet these criteria. And then you can sort of even, for larger firms, look at it across teams. Show me this team and this criteria.
And
And
it's
so
really
the
simple,
reporting,
right? You decide what you wanna do, and then just make those fields required. You have to say
yeah.
yes or no. You have to say yes or no on all of them, or you have to check them, or if you check QAR, you have to check, all those other boxes to make sure, like, you have to opt in or opt out, and it just works, right? It just tells you what you've done.
And I know that this is going to make this one a little bit longer, but I also want to really quickly get in on this one that like, keep in mind that there is a difference between meetings and events inside of Quiver. And one of the things that came up in this conversation was, why don't I just put all this stuff on the event? Like that seems to like simplify it down. And the thing that we wanted to remind people about is events are typically coming off your calendar. And most of us use probably something like Calendly or Outlook or some tool to like, reach out to the client and say, hey, schedule this review meeting with me. If I start putting information onto that event, which is the thing that shows up on the calendar, it shows up on the client calendar too. And so I worked at a firm where they were using the description field to do some of the prep. And one of the individuals that was on this particular team was like, God, why is this client so difficult? And they put that kind of as like a little note in the description and it showed up on the client calendar and the client saw it. That was a tough conversation for that team during that meeting because they didn't like, it seems like such an easy thing to do to just put data on that event as opposed to putting it on a separate record that is only internal. But like they got caught on that one and it was just kind of an unintended consequence. It was a whoops. But that's the type of stuff also that we really want, we really encourage people to sort of keep the events and keep the meetings separate because it's easy to forget that that data is getting replicated back out to the client and they might see it. And so whether it is like whatever it might be, the meeting record is that internal resource. And I think that like, I want to have that conversation as part of this other conversation because like there's data that we're probably tracking. We don't necessarily want our clients to see. And that break helps protect that data, keep it internal as opposed to, well, yeah, just, sync that event out to everybody's calendar. No big deal. It can be a big deal, right? Like
Yeah, we don't wanna do
that's,
that. No, so
that's one of those gotchas.
but I love how you started this conversation about how sometimes, households and contacts are highly customized. People are, and every time we have a user share their screen at office hours, a one-off support meeting, support call with the user, you look at households and contacts like, oh, nice, you did some cool stuff here. I love to see it, customize it, make it your own. We're not offended. We encourage that. But yeah, medias are something that you're right aren't it doesn't click often that this is something I can customize. So just like you want to have specific fields on your household or your contact to make your jobs just a little bit easier, you can do the exact same thing for meetings. And I do think this might be I don't think every advisor, especially at some of the larger firms, is going to enjoy having to check a box or spend 15 seconds on that. But I can tell you right now, the compliance officers, the director of operations, just making sure that you're actually providing the service that your contract says you're going to provide. I mean, imagine come an audit or come an exam from your regulators. Like, yeah, we do track our contract says that we provide these 7 core functions for our clients, and we track every single meeting in which we talk about them. And here's a list of when we've done it for every single one of our clients. Boom.
And Steve, I think even related to that, like, I don't know that there's a single Quiver user that doesn't want to do the best possible job that they can for their clients. Like, I think one of the things that I really like is that I feel our users are advisors that are very focused on doing the best they can for their clients. And recognizing that we're all human, it's easy to forget things. It's easy to get, going in a meeting and "Oh, I forgot to bring this up. I'm got to make sure I'm going to do it at the next meeting." Those are easy things to have happen. I mean, I remember when I was an advisor, there were times where we just didn't get to something because the client hijacked the meeting and we spent 20 minutes talking about how awesome their grandkids were. That's fantastic. But like, I need to talk to you about your IPS. We want to make sure that we're serving clients well. And part of that is holding ourselves accountable for the things that we want to make sure that we do every year. And this makes that really easy by just saying, like, what are the items that we want to make sure that we cover? Awesome. Put them on a list so we have visibility.
For sure. For sure. No, I love it. We'll call that a wrap. Good stuff as always. If you're a Quiver user, remember, join us for office hours on Wednesdays, where we talk about similar items. And you'll notice again, this is more of a how can I make my life easier? This isn't how can I create a custom field? Because our community teaches you how to do that. We've already empowered you to do that. Now it's that next level. It's borderline consulting work. How can we make your operations directors, your compliance officers, your advisors, how can we make your back office, all of these people's lives just a little bit easier? So if you are a user, get to office hours, come hang out, see what you can learn, see how we can do that for you. And if you're not a Quiver user, that's okay. Don't worry. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect, but it's not too late. Come schedule a demo, come hang out with me, come hang out with Will, and see what Quiver can do live in your practice.